Greetings, family, and welcome to another episode of Ask Dr. Mumbi. My name is Dr. Mumbi Saraki. How you doing? How's everything going? I really do pray, family, that you are well in all your ways and that you're moving into living life truly on your own terms. And now more than ever before, in your own narrative, because Babylon's narrative has collapsed, family. There is no longer one global story that is holding the minds of the people. There is a major narratives war going on, not just on this plane, but even in the so-called heavenlies, family. Every story now is pushing for manifestation. It's all predictive programming. It's all trying to sell you that their version of reality is the right one. And, I've gotten several emails from you guys. One asking me to talk about what's happening between Iran and Israel. Stargates. I told you every conflict right now, family, is about the stargates. It's about the portals because all the portals have been activated. And I'll do a whole separate show on portals, family. So definitely make sure you're subscribed to this channel and our secondary channel, Dr. Mumbi Spiritual Show. But what used to happen before, the way the divided states took over the group consciousness of the motherland was extremely subtle. It started with the way they set up media because they went to literally clone different African countries after colonialism and after so-called independence, which had been the hard power taking over and then us fighting off the hard power and then backing off, but never really removing the hard power. That's why nearly all African countries have a foreign military occupation. Is when they, had us set up their newspapers and their radio stations and their TV stations, mimicking, like the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation was a mimic of the British Broadcasting Corporation. So they opened a clone BBC in every single country, English speaking and stuff like that. And then this became their mouthpiece. And it became cool to have a TV. It came, it was like everyone used to buy a newspaper. All governments would buy the newspaper every day. All shops would have the newspaper because we didn't have like the mobile phones and the internet. This is where Africa started, and this is where the neo-colonial indoctrination started, family. And the way the media was set up is because a lot of our African media houses were kind of small. They didn't have a budget to have a journalist in the divided states, to have a journalist in Europe. That's why, until the internet, a lot of Africans on the motherland had no idea what was happening in the divided states, family. All we saw was the hip hop, the music videos, and the only movie they brought us was Roots, which was a global psyop stories for other days. So we were mostly in the dark. And what used to happen is a lot of these media stations, they would hire like 4 or 5 journalists. And these journalists would go, one would cover the government, one would cover, the general public, report on accidents, any emergencies, anything that went on. Then different people would cover the different press conferences because different companies and stuff would request journalists to press conferences. So these journalists would go out and they'd write these articles. I actually worked for one of these newspapers when I was younger, when I was like 16, family. And we'd write these articles, we'd submit it, you're paid by word. And these would appear on the first 3 pages of the newspaper, and they'd be maybe the first 2, 3 stories to be covered in the TV, in the news TV, news at 9 and news at 7 and stuff like that. All the other stories would be sourced from Reuters and from Associated Press. There was a point where Kenya was going to Reuters to find out what was happening in Zimbabwe, to find out what was happening in South Africa, to even get news on what was happening in West Africa. And this is where Babylon took over the global trade of narratives and took over the global narrative. So because Reuters had a bigger budget and the BBCs of this world and the Deutsche Welle, which is the German version, because they had big budgets, till today even the New York Times, they were able to have their own journalist in Kenya, their own journalist in Uganda, their own journalist in Tanzania. So we never even traded stories. We would basically get our few stories from our local people, and then the rest of the stories, but then we weren't getting them for free. People were buying them. We'd get them from Associated Press and Reuters. And so that's how they set up this whole global narrative and created all these desires for Mama Africa to be like the Westerner, because those were the only stories we were being fed. And so when the internet came and then YouTube came and now TikTok, there has been cataclysmic shifts in the narrative of Africa. And that's what the awakening has been about, because now we're awake. We're just awakening even more. But Africa is awake because there is no longer a monopoly on the information, which is why countries like Kenya even wanted to shut down TikTok, because they found that whenever something was going on, whenever there was a major national event, most Kenyans now are rushing to TikTok, they're rushing to YouTube, mainly TikTok though, and Twitter as well, although Twitter is seen as a bougie kind of whatever, to get their, and Twitter is also paid hashtags, but to get their news. Even as a government, even as some people are watching the major traditional news channels, they will always be on Twitter to see what's happening. And a lot of us actually get our news now. Some of us have not owned TVs in years, from Twitter. Like, I'll only ever see the local TV stations when someone has quoted something on Twitter, and I'll watch the clip, whatever. And so a lot of these traditional medias, which have been like neo-colonial stations across the motherland, are losing their influence. They've lost the attention of the people. And a lot of them have tried to diversify into YouTube and podcasting and everything, but they used to look down on these. So they're starting like anyone else. They thought that because they're the Kenya television network or whatever, they'll have people will tune in. No. There are some local YouTubers who get way more views than some of these traditional media houses. And a lot of them are being forced to even shut down because they can't pay their media and staff. So what am I trying to say? Number one, the Babylon narrative has completely collapsed. And because they can't hide their predictive programming anymore, everyone now is on a propaganda tool. Russia today is telling us what Russia wants us to know. The CNNs of this world are telling us what the divided states leadership wants us to know. Democratic leadership wants us to know. The BBC is telling us what the British government and the British crown want us to know. Al Jazeera is giving us the Arab perspective. We still don't have like an African station, but what we do have is African journalists that have changed and are changing the game. And so the reason I'm even doing this, family, is familiarize yourself with our voices. Familiarize yourself with how to look for information on. I know right now it's still these foreign things, the TikToks and everything, but ours is coming. But we can no longer rely on what our local TV stations are saying, because them, it's like listening to CNN. In fact, for a long time, instead of supporting local actors and local TV programs, a lot of these local TV channels would show their news and then they'd run CNN the whole day, not realizing they're programming the people, and giving their power away for free. All our airports used to run these, but now people aren't there. People are here getting their own information. So if you're not getting your own information, start now. And family, it's time that we develop that culture of supporting our own voices, because there is a lot happening right now with the return of the Black Sun, with Mama Earth going through a major cleansing. that we cannot be hooked to Babylon, because even Babylon has no idea what is really going on, and they're still trying to keep us in their attention so that they can harvest our energy to keep their world alive. So you really need to become, number one, more spiritual in this season. We acknowledge, our ancestors and the birds as well, family. Learn to become intuitive, because all the chosen ones right now, we're getting the information in real time from our spiritual team, or we are being directed to the information, or the information is just appearing on our timelines on some of these social media platforms. Support our own voices, family, our global, melanated, golden voices. Because right now we're in the age of the seers and the prophets. They're the ones who are being shown what's up. Like, I'll end quickly on this. There was this alert that was given in the divided states that was talking about how after the so-called eclipse, a massive ice sheet fell off Antarctica. And when they were following the movement of this thing, it was heading to the motherland. So Africa, some of our African American, I know you guys are Native American. Story for other days. I'm so happy that people are figuring it out. But anyway, our kin in the Americas got in touch with me, and they were telling me, Mumbi, be careful, because they're saying that a so-called tsunami could hit East Africa, etc., etc. And I went to check what our African media was saying. Absolutely nothing. It's actually the warning that came from the divided states. And I went online, I got all the information. A lot of our brothers and sisters had already produced TikToks on what was happening and were following, even live following. And the Mzungu journalists, who are doing a great job, they were also following these things through all the different apps and stuff that Babylon has made us aware of. And they were able to see that instead of coming into the eastern coast of Africa, somehow that thing shifted and went past South Africa. So there was even crazy rain in South Africa around the 9th and the 10th. And then now it's gone into the Atlantic and it's heading to the divided states. But who is telling us about these things? Who is warning us? Obviously, not our local government. Some of them have no clue. So support your local vloggers, bloggers, journalists. And consider supporting us as well, family. You can do so through Patreon or by sending us a love donation through PayPal. But if you don't even have the finances to do that, develop your own ear, your spiritual ear, and you will know what's going on. Learn to observe nature and observe the animals and the behavior of the animals. That's why it's even good to get a pet if you're in a position to. Because no one knows what's going on. The world has moved from past and future to real time. Tuko pamoja.